Hello students, I am Vipul Mittal, and in this session I will discuss what you should do if you receive a request for a change in the type of engagement. Let's say you are asked to audit the financial statements of X company. So you are auditing the financial statements of X company. Now, suppose management asks you to change the engagement. They do not want you to audit the financial statements. They want you to perform a review. They do not want you to complete the audit engagement, but perform a review of financial statements, which is kind of lower level of engagement. So currently you are auditing the financial statements of X company, but management asks you not to audit, but perform a review. And this review is a lower level of engagement. Here you do not express an opinion on the financial statements. You only express your conclusion. You perform limited procedures in case of a review. Review is not that extensive compared to audit. You do not express an opinion. You provide a lower level of assurance in a review. So management of X company requests you that, Mr. Auditor, please do not complete this audit that you are doing, but perform a review of the financial statements. Management of X company requests for a change in the type of engagement from audit to review. Now what you should do? Let's see. An engagement for which you obtain a lower level of assurance. Then the auditor should determine whether reasonable justification for doing so exists. That whether there is a reasonable justification for change. So you are the auditor and you have to decide whether there is a reasonable justification for the change. Whether I should stop performing audit and start doing a review and give my review report. Should I do that? Management initially requested for an audit engagement. I am performing an audit. I have not yet completed the audit. Now management asks me to perform a review. An engagement that provides a lower level of assurance. Should I move from audit to review? Question is that whether there is a reasonable justification for that. Sometimes there is a reasonable justification. Sometimes there is no reasonable justification. Sometimes there is no reasonable justification. For example, management has reported account receivable at $1 million. You have to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding this, and you want to do an external confirmation from the debtors. You want to do an external confirmation from customers that okay, what is the amount that they owe to the organization? But management does not allow you to do that. Management does not allow you to get a confirmation from customers regarding amount due. As a result, you do not have sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding this. Because of this, you may express a qualified opinion or you may modify your opinion. Now, management knows that and they know that because of this, you may express a qualified opinion. But, or you may modify your opinion and ask you to change the engagement from audit to review. Now, there is no reasonable justification for this. Whether you can really move from audit to review just because you do not have sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding account receivable. Because you do not have sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding account receivable, management is asking you to change the engagement from audit to review. Is this a reasonable ground for change? Answer is no. So there is no reasonable justification for changing the type of engagement. Now what you should do? Withdraw. Withdraw from the engagement if possible. Sometimes there is a reasonable justification for change. So reasonable justification exists. For example, So if there is change in circumstances and now management is asking you to change the engagement, it may be a reasonable reason for change. For example, if why management is asking you to change the engagement, because earlier X company's financial statements are to be submitted to the regulatory body for approval. And regulatory body required that these financial statements should be audited. So management of X company asks you to perform an audit engagement and give an audit report. But now there is a change in requirement of the regulatory body. Now for certain approvals, regulatory body is not asking for an auditor's report, but is only asking for a review report. So management asks you to stop the audit and change the type of engagement to review and give a review report. Justified, reasonable, makes sense. So there are certain changes in the requirements of the regulatory body. Now the regulatory body does not require an auditor's report, but it requires a review report. This change from audit to review can be justified. So you have to determine whether there is a reasonable justification for change or not. So if management requests you to change the audit engagement to an engagement that provides a lower level of assurance, for example, review, then see whether this can be justified. If yes, fine. If no, then you may have to withdraw because there is no reasonable ground for the change. Now, if you decide to change because you believe that there is a reasonable justification for change and you move from audit to review, and now you're performing the review engagement, now you will give a review report, not an auditor's report. So now you will give a review report. Here you have to consider two things. You should not make a reference to the earlier audit engagement. You should not make a reference to that earlier I was engaged to perform the audit, but management requested for a change. That's why now I have performed a review and I'm giving a review report. You should not make a reference to the audit engagement. So in the review report, do not make a reference to the audit engagement. Also, do not refer to the procedures performed in the original audit engagement. So in this audit engagement, you perform certain procedures. Do not make a reference that earlier this engagement was an audit engagement, but management requested for a change. And during that time, when I was performing the audit engagement, I performed certain procedures. Do not make a reference to the procedures. Do not make a reference to the procedures you performed in the original audit engagement. So you do not include this to avoid any confusion to the reader. All right, students, I hope this was helpful. We'll connect again. Goodbye. Take care.